Imagine the thunder of Viking longships, cutting through icy northern waters, warriors ready to pillage, fearless and ferocious. But then they stopped. At the edge of an island no Viking dared to approach, not because of storms, not because of monsters, but because of people, a forgotten tribe known to most today who struck so much fear into the hearts of Viking raiders that entire voyages were abandoned at the mere whisper of their name. Welcome to a chapter of history long buried under moss, myth, and fear. This is the terrifying story of the tribe that even the Vikings feared, and it's not folklore, it's real. In an era when men believed they were descended from gods, when longboats ruled the waves, the Viking seafarers from Scandinavia dominated northern Europe from the late 8th to early 11th centuries. They raided monasteries in England, colonized Iceland, reached Greenland, and even touched the shores of North America long before Columbus. And when conquest was a way of life, it took more than brute strength to earn fear. The Orkneys, the Shetlands, and even more isolated archipelagos cloaked in fog, legends, and old gods. It took something darker, something beyond the known. The Viking psyche, built on honor, death, and glory, rarely flinched. They had no alphabet, no cities, no monuments. Others, the painted dead. But what archaeologists now believe is even stranger. So when it did, you listened. This isn't just a ghost story. Fear wasn't an emotion, they wore it like armor. Caves yawned open like mouths in the cliffside, and tides shifted in unnatural patterns. Norse navigators described stars that vanished over these lands, compasses that spun wildly, and birds that refused to land. They lived on cliff edges and caves, burned black by fire and bone. They hunted not just animals but rival humans. Locals believed the very earth there was cursed that it breathed, that it remembered. Maps from the era labeled the region with phrases like, "Here be death or no return." Others argue they were simply exiled warriors, survivors of fallen druid sects or cursed clans. They would line cliffs with carved skulls, use fire and smoke to create visions. These people understood fear not just as defense, but as weaponry. Their warriors screamed in battle with unearthly shrieks, smeared in blood and chalk, appearing almost ghostly in the sea mist. Their rituals, however, don't match any known group. And their architecture, if it can even be called that, is deeply symbolic. Circles of stone, spirals of bones, and fire pits arranged like constellations. Rituals involving animal bones, chanting, and burning effigies created eerie sounds that haunted the seas. Camps would be found abandoned, blood-stained, but without The tribe was everywhere and nowhere. These weren't just homes, there were statements and warnings. They struck from shadows only to melt into the stone. The tribe's memory embedded itself in Viking folklore not as foes, but as forces. One chieftain refused to let his son join an expedition near the island, saying, "Bravery is for men. That place is for shadows." It's rare to see Norse texts admit defeat. Rarer still to see them label it divine punishment. But this tribe, they weren't seen as men, they were omens. Another account claims their chants could cause hallucinations, sailors turning on each other, driven mad by fear. Fire signals would appear at dusk, and by dawn, entire villages were silent. They didn't need to fight, they let your mind destroy itself. By morning, its sails were torn, the hull was burned, and the crew was gone. The longship drifted back to sea, empty but for one thing. A carved message in runes turned back. Even the gods weep here. That, perhaps, was their deadliest weapon. They were the island. They are entries in Norse sagas and monk chronicles dismissed by modern scholars for centuries, now being re-examined. What kind of people thrived in such places? And what did they protect so fiercely that even death was preferable to its discovery? Their ships were dragon-headed and swift, designed for both deep seas and river raids. With iron axes and unshakable resolve, they carved their legacy into history. The Viking Age was not an age of hesitation, yet even they had boundaries, and those boundaries were often drawn not in sand, but in the whispers of cursed shores. This tale begins at one such edge where Norse courage met something far older and far stranger. It's an echo from a time before the world was mapped, before the wild was tamed. Prepare to enter a realm where myth and memory collide, and where the line between man and monster was blurred by blood, belief, and ancient power. Before we can understand fear, we must first understand the fearless. They were expert sailors, ruthless warriors, cunning traders, and even poets and kings. They were not easily frightened. To a Viking, death in battle meant entry to Valhalla. So when you hear that Vikings avoided a place not due to natural obstacles, but because of the people there, you know the story. It's about to get dark. They worshipped gods like Odin, Thor, and Freya, deities of war, wisdom, and fertility. Off the coasts of modern-day northern Scotland, far from mainland Europe's known centers of power, lies a chain of remote islands. Here, oral history tells of a tribe known only in whispers, yet their presence was enough to make Vikings turn their longships around. Some called them the Sea Witches of Tuli. The islands they inhabited were shrouded in mist for most of the year. Their real name? Lost, but the Norse sagas describe them as pale-skinned, ash-covered figures with long, wild hair, and faces painted in spirals and blood-red symbols. Unlike the Celts or Picts, this tribe did not farm or trade. They worshipped forgotten sea gods. A Viking raider from the 10th century wrote of a shore lined with skulls and eyes that glowed in the wind. Another spoke of drums at night and voices in a tongue that twisted the soul. These are not myths. Some believe they descended from an even older population, possibly Mesolithic seafarers who adapted to isolation. Genetic evidence suggests a separate lineage from surrounding tribes. Let's break it down. Why would a people with no navy, no cities, no wealth terrify Vikings? Psychological warfare. These tribes used illusion and terror tactics unknown to the Norse. Poisons and traps. Some accounts speak of poisoned arrows, pit traps, and ritual sacrifice. Necromantic rituals. Viking sailors believed these tribes could curse the wind or call storms. Disappearing tactics. The tribe never attacked directly. Instead, Viking scouts would disappear. Ships would vanish overnight. Knowledge of the land. The tribe knew every cave, cliff, and channel. One Viking survivor was quoted as saying, "We fought warriors and beasts, but those were ghosts in flesh." The Viking sagas were full of bravery, but occasionally you'd find fear. In the saga of Thorkel the Red, a legendary warrior and explorer, we find this passage: "Beyond the stone shore lies the cursed land. Thorkel's men who walked it returned mad. Those who did not were never found." Another saga tells of a ship called Fenrir's Grin that docked near the island for supplies. These stories weren't sung in mead halls. They were whispered in the dark to warn future generations. They became bedtime threats, like boogeymen. In recent decades, archaeologists exploring Northern Isles have found curious signs. Burial mounds filled with human bones, not animal, suggesting cannibalistic rituals. Carvings of spirals and wave-like patterns similar to Viking fear symbols used to ward off evil. Weapons made of whalebone, shaped like known Nordic or Celtic tools. Evidence of massive bonfires used at night, possibly for signaling or ritual magic. Even more bizarre, some cave walls contain handprints tarred into the stone. These imprints seem to have been made with soot and ash, a haunting reminder of those who once lived there. Excavations also revealed fragments of animal remains that do not match known species in the area, hinting at possible unknown or ritualistic hunting practices. The artifacts bear no resemblance to anything found in surrounding cultures, indicating the tribe's isolation and unique development. Tools crafted with unusual materials suggest an advanced understanding of their environment and a deep spiritual connection to the sea and land. The discovery of unusual grave sites, arranged in complex patterns, hints at ceremonial practices tied to the tribe's belief system. Some artifacts display symbols that resemble constellations, suggesting astronomical knowledge intertwined with mythology. Despite the mystery, the evidence paints a picture of a people deeply intertwined with death and survival, living on the edge of the known world, yet firmly rooted in their own enigmatic culture. It's as if their very existence was a message carved in bone and stone, a warning to those who dared approach. Folklore passed down in local island communities speaks of the Grey Ones, humans with no eyes, only dark sockets, who could appear and disappear at will. Some modern theorists argue the tribe may have used hallucinogens from local plants or seaweed to invoke visions, creating a cult-like state. Others propose that their eerie appearances and mysterious disappearances were enhanced by natural phenomena, such as bioluminescent algae or mist, adding to their supernatural aura. The tribe's ritualistic behavior might have included trance-like states induced by these substances, allowing them to terrorize enemies with illusions and mind games. Others believe they were a lost offshoot of Prakrtic druids, driven to isolation and madness, practicing forbidden rites that blurred the lines between the living and the dead. Some even suggest they practiced death magica, a mix of shamanism and animism, believing they could speak with the ocean dead. The tribe's knowledge of the natural world was uncanny, possibly exploiting the island's geography and weather to enhance their reputation. To the Vikings, who believed the sea was sacred, this was blasphemy and horrifying. They feared not just the tribe's physical power, but their ability to manipulate unseen forces, whether human or something beyond. The tribe held dominion over fear itself. The tribe disappeared. By the 12th century, no more stories remain, no more sightings, no more Some historians believe they were wiped out by disease or conflict, victims of the very violence they once wielded. Others theorize they merged with neighboring tribes, their identity lost to time, but their bloodline lingering in subtle ways. A darker possibility is that they were victims of a climatic shift that made their island uninhabitable, forcing them to abandon their homes forever. Some legends say they retreated into the sea, becoming spirits guarding the waters they once ruled. The lack of written records leaves their end a mystery, one that invites speculation and fascination. Archaeological evidence hints at a rapid decline, with many structures abandoned and fires left unextinguished. Despite their disappearance, their legend endures, etched into the fabric of Viking folklore and the whispered warnings of islanders. Their story remains a haunting reminder that even the most fearsome can be forgotten. What if the tribe did see something the Vikings didn't? What if their isolation allowed them to tap into something ancient, primal, and terrifying? Could they have been guardians of a secret knowledge, protectors of forces beyond human understanding? Maybe their rituals were attempts to maintain a delicate balance between nature and the supernatural. Did they see the Vikings as invaders not just of land, but of balance? Or were they simply another brutal tribe, masters of fear in an age of violence? Modern paranormal researchers have taken interest in the region, citing strange electromagnetic readings and unexplainable phenomena. Skeptics dismiss these as natural anomalies, but locals remain convinced that the island still holds a power that defies explanation. The tribe's legacy continues to challenge our understanding of history and the limits of human experience. We may never know the full truth, but one thing is certain. In a world ruled by axes and blood, in a time when fear was currency, even the Vikings knew where not to sail. History often remembers the conquerors, but sometimes it whispers of those who needed no empire, no army, only fear. The forgotten tribe that terrified the Vikings still haunts the foggy edges of maps, of memory, and maybe, just maybe, of something more. If you hear drums in the mist, sail the other way.